Anytime you're shortcutting it, you're probably cheating some people. Players play. Tough players win.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Centered Podcast. For those of you joining us for the first time ever, my name is Anthony Ianni. I am a former Michigan State basketball player, as well as the first Division I college basketball player in NCAA history with autism. If you'd like to see more and hear more episodes of the Centered Podcast, you can find us on iTunes. You can find us on Spotify, as well as Odyssey.com. If you would like to see our video interviews with our guests on the Center Podcast, you can find them on our YouTube channel, which is the Center Podcast. So please review, subscribe, show love and support. Thank you all who have already done so. Thank you, everybody, for your continued support as well. Also, huge announcement. We have merchandise. That is right. My new merchandise brand, the AI44 brand merchandise, is now out and about. If you would like to get your branding and get your merchandise, please go to anthonyianni.com and click on the merchandise page, and you can get yourself some pretty cool gear. You can get yourself some 517 made in EL t-shirts, some Spartan Dog made in Beast Lansing. That's not East, that's Beast Lansing t-shirts, your Game Changer t-shirts, or maybe you want to warm up for the fall a little bit. Maybe you want to warm up for the upcoming winter. Why not get yourself a sweatshirt? How about a Cameo Game Changer sweatshirt? That's right. We have cameo sweatshirts, black sweatshirts, white sweatshirts, green. You name the color, we have it in those four. We don't have them every color. But please go and get the official merchandise of the Center Podcast, which is the AI44 brand merchandise. I am so excited for this episode. And we've had a lot of really cool and great guests on the show, but I think this guy is going to be the number one guest that we've ever had on the show. I don't know who's going to top it. It could take a big grand slam home run to top this individual. But this is an individual who is very well known for the work that he does, not just on television, but off television as well. He is a native of San Pedro, California, Rolling Hills High School, Rolling Hills Estates, California, where he grew up, where he averaged almost 24 and 14 a game. He is a former Duke University basketball player. Yes, we have a Duke Blue Devil on the show today. I don't know why, but we do. And he played for Coach K, from 1982 to 1986, and helped Duke to the Final Four, as well as the national championship game in 1986. His recruiting class is still the highest scoring class in the history of college basketball. He finished with over 1,000 points, grabbed close to 700 rebounds while shooting over 55% from the field. He is now a college basketball analyst for ESPN. He has been doing color commentating with ESPN since 1995. He's been an in-studio analyst since then as well. And he has served as one of the co-hosts of College Game Day, along with Reese Davis, Hubert Davis, Digger Phelps, Bobby Knight, Jay Williams, so on and so forth. If you haven't figured out who I'm talking about right now, it's Jay Bilas. Yes, that is right. We have Jay Bilas on the show today. I'm super excited for you guys to listen to our conversation. We talked about a lot. We talked about his time growing up in California, to the days he was recruited, why he hated getting recruited in high school, to his days at Duke. We talk about Coach K, and I think it's appropriate we are having this conversation because this is Coach K's last year at Duke. And we also talk about the NCAA, along with the name, image, and likeness for athletes getting paid now. And we also get a little preview of this upcoming college basketball season, which he says, quote, it'll be the most fun college basketball season in the last 10 years. So let's get into it. Here's my conversation with ESPN and former Duke University basketball player, Jay Bilas. So first of all, I'm excited for this episode because we've had a lot of great guests on, but in my opinion, I think you're probably going to be the number one favorite guest for our listeners. because of everything you have done. And I don't know if you, and I don't know, obviously you don't know this, but I have some Duke ties in my family. So my wife's aunt and uncle are both Duke alums. They played football and volleyball at Duke. So I think they'll be pretty happy to hear that Jay Bilas is on this episode. So welcome to the podcast, sir.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm glad you're at least some of your family members came over to the dark side. That's nice.
Well, it's funny because, you know, every year that I see them, because we have a lake house in White Lake, Michigan, Lake Sudgeon there. And every time they come up, they always have bragging rights because Duke would always beat Michigan State every year. And so anytime I'd see him, it'd be Duke this, Duke that. And then when we beat Duke to go to the Final Four in 2019, I had my one shining moment, you know, pardon the pun there, but I had my one shining moment to brag with them for a little bit. So that was definitely a fun summer for sure.
Well, Duke may have won sort of more total games, but I think Michigan State's won more of the ones that have counted in the tournament, haven't they? I think their tournament wins, their record against Duke's pretty darn good.
Yeah, it's not bad. I know 05 we beat them, and then they beat us in, I think it was 13, and then we beat them again in 19. Yeah, so we're 2-1 against them, you know, in the last time we played in the tournament. So we're moving on up there. So let's get right into it. So Jay, kind of talk about, you know, growing up in San Pedro, California. You know, you're a West Coast guy, Los Angeles area guy. You know, growing up, what was it like growing in the LA area?
It was great because I grew up on an area called the Peninsula. It's called the Palos Verdes Peninsula. And so I was born in San Pedro where my dad and mom grew up. And my grandmother, you know, worked in the Starkist cannery for 40 years. And my grandfather was a commercial fisherman there at the Port of Los Angeles. But Rolling Hills is probably about 20 minutes, a 15-minute drive away from San Pedro. And it was idyllic, really, because it was a little peninsula. There wasn't a lot of traffic that went through there. So it didn't give you the feeling you grew up in the hustle and bustle of LA, but you were very close to it. So you could get to it easily, but we're still a little bit removed from it. So I could walk to school every day. That wasn't a problem. And I was, you know, we were 5 minutes from the water, you know, from Redondo Beach or the Pacific Ocean, all that stuff. So I had a lot of options growing up. My parents didn't give me many options, but there were options available. So that was really nice. And I miss you miss the weather. I think one of the things, Anthony, about that, maybe even college, you know, when you're that young, now when I go back to college and look around, my head's always up. I'm looking at the architecture and how beautiful it is. My head was always down when I was in college. I was looking at the sidewalk. I got to go here. I got to get to practice. I got to do this. And when I was growing up, I don't think I realized what a beautiful setting I grew up in. It was just home. And now I go back and I'm stunned by how beautiful it is. So, you know, it's kind of appreciate what you have while you have it. I guess that's the story.
What were some of the things that you like to do as a kid? Because you kind of talked about how, you know, you're right near the ocean there, you know, in your area where you grew up. So what were kind of some of the other things that you kind of like to do when you were growing up?
I played almost every sport growing up. My dad didn't want me to play football until I got to high school, so I wasn't allowed to play football, but I played everything else. You know, typical that way of a kid in that era. You know, I took my baseball glove to school every day and we'd stay after school and play over the line, stuff like that, or play basketball. So I was a very sports oriented kid. I got in trouble a lot. So I was in the principal's office quite a bit. Nothing crazy, but I was just always doing something stupid with my friends. And I think we were parented really well, but we were not watched all the time. And so it's different for the way, you know, sort of my kids were brought up, where we were on top of them all the time. You know, our parents, I think they knew where we were, but not all the time. And we were expected home by a certain time, but that gave you a little bit of freedom to make mistakes, really. And you just hope some of them weren't big. But, you know, I'd go to the beach with my friends. I wasn't allowed to do it every day because my parents thought they didn't want me to be like a surfer kid that stopped paying attention to what you're supposed to do every day. So I was limited in my beach time. But other than that, I did pretty much what I wanted. It's just what I wanted was sports oriented. So my parents knew I was in the gym or on the baseball field.
When did you kind of start falling in love with the game of basketball?
From the first dribble. My mother, I think she wanted me out of the house was the main thing, but my mother had seen an ad in the newspaper for tryouts for the local basketball league when I was in third grade, I think. And so she drove me up to the local high school where I wound up going to high school. And I went through a tryout, and I'd never played organized basketball before. I just played with my friends. And I was selected out of that first tryout. You know, I thought I was going to play in the league where, you know, they put you on a team and you're the Celtics or the Lakers or the Clippers or whatever, and you play every Saturday at the high school, and that's the end of it. And I made something called a conference team, which I didn't know what it was, but all of a sudden I'm on a separate team, and that was the travel team. And so from fourth grade through eighth grade with the same group of guys for that whole time, we traveled and played probably 50, 60 games a year. And it was like a traveling all-star team of best friends. And that wound up being my high school basketball team. And I played more basketball with those guys than anybody else I ever played with, honestly. It was kind of an amazing stroke of luck that my mom drove me up there that day, because I don't know that, you know, that was a tight group that I got into that tryout. And I don't know if I would have made it other years, but I'm really grateful I got to play with those guys.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned how, you know, you play with a group of guys that not only, you know, at a younger age, but going on through high school too. You know, it was kind of like that with me in high school. You know, a bunch of guys I played with in Little League, and then we ended up, you know, playing together in high school. You know, I've kind of always told people that if you play with the same guys, you know, for over a certain amount of time, you know, especially from starting at a younger age going through high school, your high school teams are probably going to be pretty good because of the chemistry and the connection that you've had with those guys ever since, you know, you were younger.
I agree. And so there are two things there. One, you are going to be a better team. And I think you're going to play at a higher level. But for me, and I spend a lot of time, I have my own basketball camp. So I spend a lot of time talking to parents about this. And I've been through it as a parent with my kid. The value of some of this AAU basketball and travel team stuff goes way beyond players improving and working on their skills and getting better. The things I remember now as a 57-year-old man about my basketball experience have less to do with the on-court stuff and more to do with the relationships that we forged with the time we spent off the floor. So having that time together was really valuable and fun. I mean, we really had fun. And I don't want, and I talk to parents about this a lot, like, you know, it's great that the parents are encouraging their kids to pursue excellence and to get better at their craft and to try to be the best player they can be. But you don't want to lose what's important about it. And it's supposed to be fun. And I had a baseball coach that used to say, having fun is doing hard things well. And so it can be hard and fun at the same time. But at the end of this, the players aren't going to remember, you know, the drills that you did or all that stuff. That's really going to be secondary. It's going to be how they were treated, how they were made to feel, and the relationships that they forged. And that sounds corny, and I don't mean it to, but it really is true. If it weren't true, I wouldn't say it.
No, and I agree with you 100% because, you know, the one thing I've noticed, and I help coach varsity girls basketball at Livonia Churchill High School down the street from my house. And one of the things I've noticed, not just with some of our players, but just like all high school athletes in general, no matter what sport it is that some of these young athletes today think that playing a sport is a job, which it shouldn't be. You know, like you said, it should be about having fun and enjoying your love and passion for the game. Like if you're going to practice and you're dreading it, like, oh man, like I got to do this at practice, I got to do this, then don't be there. Don't sign up, because like if you feel like what you and I do in life, we have jobs. Like you're an attorney, that's a job. I'm a motivational speaker and advocate, that's a job. You know, having a job is getting paid for something. And for high school athletes, like, first of all, if you want a job, you know, go work at the local car wash or something like that, which we have some of our kids do. But don't ever feel like that playing a sport is a job, because like you said, at the end of the day, it should be about fun. And if you are working hard and you're having fun in the process, that should be the most important thing for a high school athlete.
Yeah, I agree. I think you hit every nail on the head with that. And I often talk to parents and especially coaches about this and their youth coaches. I don't need to talk to Tom Izzo about this. He's got that straight. But sort of the idea that, I think every coach in high school or before high school would agree that only a certain percentage of these players are going to go on and play in college or go on and play professional. Well, if that's true, then, and I believe it is, but if that's true, then the amount of time that players are putting into this has to be about more than the game itself. And we have to make it about more. And we have to make it a great experience for them overall, not just for the very best players that are going to go on. Because otherwise, the amount of money and the amount of time and the amount of effort that's expended in sports is not worth it. It's unjustified. But if it's about more than just going on and playing after that, and it's not just a rung on a ladder of success, then it's worth every penny and then some.
I agree, totally agree. So let's talk about your high school career now. You were a top 50 recruit during your time at Rolling Hills Estates High School. I mean, you average, your senior year, almost 24 points a game, 14 rebounds a game. Throughout your high school career, when did it kind of become a realization that, you know what, I have a chance to play at the next level, whether it's D1, D2, wherever, when did that kind of come into your head?
Well, when I was in 8th grade and I was finishing up my last year playing on that conference team, I had a great coach named Dick Spidell. So he coached me all those years. He was my first introduction to basketball, to that kind of high level competition. And the very last practice that we had, I was walking out the gym and he was walking his car and my mom was waiting to pick me up. And he kind of stopped me and we talked about, the next step for me. And my high school had 2,500 students and I'm headed off to high school the next year to go to 9th grade. And he had mentioned to me about, sort of my next step in high school. And I said to him, do you think I can make the high school team? And he looked at me and he goes, make the team. He goes, you're going to be the best player that school's ever had. And that was the first time I ever thought, maybe I can be good at this. I thought I was a good player among my friends, but when when your coach says, you're going to be the best player that this high school's ever had, I started looking at my career differently, or my, where I could be, sort of the trajectory. So I started putting more time into it and really applying myself even more. And by the time I got to be a sophomore, I knew I was pretty good. I started getting recruited, but I didn't know, recruiting letters, but I didn't know until I started going to some of these camps, these recruiting camps, that how well regarded I was. And that helped me see myself that way until it was validated by something else. I wasn't sure I believed it. I always felt like I was pretty good when I stepped on the floor and played, but I wasn't playing against, the best players in the country every time I stepped on the floor. So that was when I started really seeing, hey, people think I'm good. And when I was ranked among the top juniors in the country or something, I was like, wait a minute. I didn't look at myself this way. Then I started changing the way I approached it.
Who was the first school that offered you?
I didn't get offers like that back then. It was right around your senior year where they were making offers. Okay. But the first school that I got a letter from was the University of Oregon. And Jim Haney was the coach back then. And then Jim O'Brien was his assistant and coached in the NBA for a long time. And then I started getting letters from all over the place. I kept a lot of them. I still have letters from Judd Heathcote. It's kind of funny, the old school guys, but it's funny, Anthony, like I did not have a good relationship with my high school coach. It was he was very difficult to deal with. And it made a big impact on me, both negatively and positively. And so when I was being recruited, I had one singular goal, and that was to find the coach I wanted to play for. Like it sounds awful, but it's true. I did not care about the school. I wasn't like looking at the library or does this have my major? I didn't care. I wanted to find the coach I wanted to play for, because if I wasn't happy in basketball, And I wasn't in high school. I was happy with a lot of my teammates. I was happy with the way I played and the way I approached it, but I was very unhappy with my coach and the way I was treated and the way he treated my teammates. And I was not going to go through that again. And it was the only time, college is the only time in basketball you get to choose who you play for. Everything else is dictated to you. And I was going to make the right choice.
So when did Duke kind of come into the conversation for you?
I was 17. It was 1981, my junior year in college. And I'd received some of the, back then, I don't know what it's like now, but back then, you got letters from schools when you started hitting these lists and everything, and they, including a questionnaire, crap like that. Mm-hmm. But when you really started getting recruited, it was like your junior year, at the end of your junior year. So Duke reached out to me. I had never heard of Coach K. When he said his name, I had never heard it before. And I knew Duke because they had played in the 1978 national championship game against Kentucky. I didn't know where it was. I knew it was on the East Coast, but I didn't know where it was. So I had a lot to learn. But, once I got to know Coach K, I really liked him. And that's what put Duke on the, at the top of my list was I liked him.
So what was kind of like, and I've had, a couple of other high school recruits on the podcast, I've always asked them, who was kind of like your top five. So who was kind of like ended up being like the top five, like final three for you when it came to deciding where you wanted to go?
I came down to four coaches and the schools they were at don't seem to make any sense, but I came down to Coach K at Duke, Jim Boeheim at Syracuse. I was actually the first California kid that Syracuse ever recruited. Lute Olson and he was at Iowa at the time. And Ted Owens at Kansas. So those were the four coaches I liked the best. And oddly enough, I kept in great touch with all of them. I still keep in good touch with Ted Owens, who's obviously much older now. Coach Olson just passed away. And then it's crazy, but Boeheim and Coach K they're still coaching. I mean, it's been 35 years or 40 years, whatever it is. And they're still doing this. It's mind-boggling, really.
So what separated Coach K from Coach Boeheim, from Coach Olson? Like what separated him from the rest?
Nothing I could really articulate in words. It was more a feeling, because I think I would have done extraordinarily well and been really happy with any of those four coaches. My mom wanted Lute Olson. She when Lute Olson walked through the door, she thought Paul Newman came to the house. And so she was, I mean, you remember what Coach Olson looked like. I mean, he was just this, magnificent looking man. And she was in love with him. And so if she had any say, I was going to be at Iowa. But there was just a connection I had with Coach K because of how honest he was. And it wasn't like, I thought, okay, well, I can trust him with my wallet or anything. It was just, I knew whatever he said was going to be true. And he wasn't going to jerk me around. And I was tired of that. I did not want to be jerked around. And so that was really it. I felt like I could trust him at the highest level. And it wasn't an issue of, well, I can't trust this guy. I could trust all of them. But there was just that little extra with Coach K that I felt like, you know what, he's the one. It's got to be him. And I never really hesitated. The only thing, you probably went through the same thing. Like when I came home from every visit, that's where I was going. And that lasted for a few days. But when it finally wore off and I'm going, okay, I need to decide. And I hated being recruited. I hated it. So I wanted to get it over with. And so I decided in December, I said, I've had enough. I'm going to Duke. I want this over. And so I committed like 4 months before the signing period. And I knew it was him. And so I ended it right there.
So you just said you hated being recruited. Like, what was the thing that you didn't like about the recruiting process?
I don't like being babysat. And so I didn't like being called all the time. And back then, there weren't cell phones, you couldn't text. So you got an extraordinary amount of mail and you got a lot of phone calls to your family's rotary phone. So the phone was ringing all the time. And, look, you can put rules in all you want to about only call after this time, but they call. And my mom had to answer the phone every time because, back then, this is 1981 and 81. So back then, if the phone rang, my mother thought, well, somebody could be in an accident by the side of the road or something. You had to answer the phone. There's no call screening or stuff like that. It was the old school rotary phone. And so that got tiresome. And I got tired of people making pitches to me all the time. I felt like, you said it once, I heard you the first time. I don't need it all the time. And I got angry a number of times at some coaches, including some of the Duke assistants that called, just saying, look, I've had enough. And one of them, a guy named Chuck Swenson, who's a great friend, and I loved him. He called, and Coach K was teetering at the time. There was a lot of criticism about him and his recruiting and all that stuff. And there was an article being written in a magazine back then called Inside Sports, and John Feinstein was writing the article. And so the Duke assistant had called and said, if you commit now, that can be sort of the closing of the article. And I'm like, what are you effing kidding me? Like, I'm not committing. I'm not doing anything based on the timing of some article. This is my future you're talking about. And I'm like, no. And he's like, well, are you not? I thought you were, 100% Duke or this or that. And he starts like testing my commitment. And I'm like, you know what? F you. I didn't say that, but that's what I was thinking. Like, are you kidding me? Like, if this is the way it's going to be before I get there, like, how are you going to treat me when I get there? And so I hung up on him. And I not only did I hang up on him, it was one of those rotary phones that had a hook on it. So the phone bounced off the hook and into my mother's open washing machine where she was soaking something. So we had to get a new phone. And I was pretty pissed. And Coach K called not long after that, and we ironed it out that they were just over exuberant and all that. They were excited about the possibility of me committing. I committed right after that anyway, a couple of weeks after that. But it was that kind of crap that I could not handle. I just didn't want to hear it. And it wasn't that it was pressure. I didn't care about the pressure. It was more a thing of I heard you the first time. I don't need this again. I'm not buying a used car. And like, I get it. It's just, I'm going to school, I'm playing, I'm going to make up my mind when I make up my mind. And this is the only time I get to decide. After that, I'm stuck. And so I'm not screwing this up. That was my mindset. So that's what I meant by hating recruiting. I just hated the constant sales job of, look, you called me already. You don't even call me every day. We're not dating. I'll let you know I'm good.
Do you think it's the complete opposite now for recruiting today? Do you think today's recruits probably love that a little bit more? Love getting the phone calls, love getting the texts, love getting the hype from some of these recruiting websites?
Maybe. I think it's probably I think it was probably the same. I don't think people have changed all that much, and I don't think young people have changed. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like I didn't enjoy attention. If I saw a recruiting ranking and I didn't think I was ranked at the right place, I was mad and wanted to show everybody, that kind of thing. If I felt like somebody, when UCLA did not show me, in my hometown school, did not show me the attention I thought they should have. And that really pissed me off. So yeah, I mean, I was the same as everybody else, but I guess I'm going back and forth here, but kind of once the baseline had been established for the recruiting, I didn't need it. I didn't need flowers brought, like, if I'm dating a girl, I don't need her to be bringing me flowers or baking me cookies every day. I get it. We're good. And it was that kind of feeling like I'm okay. I'm not insecure. You don't need to do this all the time. That's what I hated about it. It was just a constant sales job. And then once I committed, the recruiting continued by other schools, and I understood it at first. After a while, I was going, you know what? I said no already. Like I said no the first time. Then you came back, and I get it that you knocked again, but I said no again. I meant it. I don't need this. I'm not interested in this. But you didn't. But at the same time, you go, okay, well, these people are in basketball. I'm going to see them the rest of my basketball career. I don't want to tell them to go, to F off, but that's what I felt. So it was that's the part I didn't like.
So now you're at Duke. What was kind of like your welcome to Duke basketball moment? Because for us in Michigan State, we always did, our initiation, whether you were a freshman or incoming transfer, the initiation we had was we did a wall sit in the weight room. Now, I don't know if you heard this at all, with 500 pounds of sandbags in our lap. So, and we would just be doing that wall sit for like 5 or 10 minutes with 500 pounds in our lap. So that was kind of like our initiation into the program and our welcome to Michigan State type of moment. What was your welcome to Duke moment when you first got there?
When we first arrived, so we were I was a 6-man recruiting class and was rated the #1 recruiting class in the country. So there was a lot of anticipation for us getting there. And most of the players that were on the roster had been recruited by Coach K's predecessor, Bill Foster. So we were coming into an insecure roster. And we would play pickup basketball. We were required to play, but the coaches couldn't be there. It was an NCAA rule they couldn't watch. But they would put the teams out as to how things were split up. And one day it was the freshmen versus everybody else. And we realized, all right, this is Lord of the Flies today. This is going to be a competitive environment, and the recruiting part is over, and there aren't going to be rose petals thrown around at your feet anymore. And that was the first indication that this is going to be a cutthroat competitive year. And it was, and that's fine. That's the way it should be. But that was when you realized, all right, the honeymoon's over, and now the marriage begins, and it's going to be some real work.
What was Coach K like, in practice? Because obviously you've seen Coach Izzo in practice. It's really intense, high energy. I've never seen what Coach K is like in practice, but when you were there under him, what was that? What was he like in practices?
Very much the same. Very intense, very high energy, very loud, especially back then. So he was 34 years old, 35 when I started playing for him. So he could jump into drills and he got after it. He's a lot more CEO like now, not that he doesn't, sort of bring passion to it, because he does, but it's just natural. You're going to evolve and be more efficient. And I think back then, I'm sure he would be the first to admit this. It's not that he was more volatile. He was not as strategic in getting his point across. So there were times when, you needed therapy after getting it from him. Now it's more strategic as to what's the best outcome. There was blood on the floor a lot, both mentally and physically back then. But it was required. I think in building it then, because he had just gotten there and you had to build the program to be successful. It was more like a drill sergeant would have to prepare a boot camp for young soldiers. You got to get them ready for battle, and we had to get ready. We weren't ready. Now I think the players, each year builds upon the other. Maybe it's reverted back because the players don't stay as long now, but it's not quite that level of cutthroat intensity. It's a little bit more controlled.
So I got to ask you this question. We all know the Duke North Carolina rival, maybe one of the best rivalries in any sport in this country. When you got your first taste of Duke North Carolina, is the rivalry is it that intense as people say it is? Yes.
But Anthony, I'll tell you this: it is not more intense than Michigan State.
Really?
No, it's not. And this is I've been around a bunch of rivalries now as a broadcaster. And so I've seen them all from practice to the game and been around the atmospheres, whether it's Xavier, Cincinnati, Michigan State, Michigan, you name it. I've seen all those things. No rivalry, whether it's Duke, Carolina, you name it, no rivalry is more important than another to the competitors. So Duke, Carolina wouldn't be bigger for Izzo if he all of a sudden became the Carolina coach or the Duke coach. It wouldn't be bigger than the way he looked at Michigan State, Michigan. The only difference is and it's like Ohio State, Michigan in football or something. More people watch the Duke Carolina rivalry, so it seems bigger because of the outside interest in it. The rivalry itself, it is not more intense than Michigan State, Michigan. I don't believe that. But it's a bitch. I mean, I remember the first game we had against North Carolina. There's a free throw, and I'm leaning down, kind of on to get inside position against Brad Daugherty, who wound up being the number 1 overall pick in the NBA draft in 1986. And so we were both freshmen, and we're leaning in, kind of head to head, and he turns to me and says, "I'm gonna beat you like a dog." And I was like, "What? Yeah. Did you just say that to me?" And then I started going, I wonder what kind of dog he has. And then we wound up being great friends and colleagues and worked together years later. He might be the nicest person I've ever met, but something about that caused him to, say that at a free throw blockout. And when you're 18 years old, hearing that and looking around so loud, you can't hear yourself think, it kind of made an impression on you. And that, playing against Michael Jordan in that game, and Sam Perkins and Kenny Smith and all these guys, that just the team they had, you knew, man, this is for real. And I know one thing, we're not going to play anybody better than these guys. So if we can hang here, if we can win this, there's nobody we can't beat.
Was the practices going into the Carolina game like super intense with Coach K? Because, you talk about, with Coach Izzo and the Michigan State rivalry. It didn't matter if we were prepping 2 days in advance for Michigan or a week in advance. Like those Michigan practices were the most intense practices I think I've ever been a part of, during my time under him. So were those practices preparing for Carolina like intense through the roof, like focus on this right here and now?
Yes, but they weren't stated as such. Like he would never say, "All right, we're playing Carolina. We got to ratchet it up," all this stuff. He never mentioned them by name differently than any other opponent, but you could feel it was different. We knew it, and sort of the feel of things was different. But maybe he thought he didn't have to say that. But I think the other part, Anthony, was he made a big deal out of preparing for every game the same way. And you give championship effort, championship preparation for everything. And that way, when we are in a championship game, and we will be, we know how to behave. And I think that was for us the right way to go about it. But we didn't need anybody to tell us this is different. We could feel it. We knew it was different. But it was the challenge for me, and I think it's true of my teammates, was managing your emotions going into the game. And you found out pretty quickly that and this was in the 80s, so air conditioning was even different in these buildings. Duke had no air conditioning back then, so you could wear yourself out before warmups were over, both mentally and physically. Like you go into the locker room and you're drenched with sweat because you went so hard in warmups. And right. People differ with this, but I don't think warm-ups is meant to go 100%. Warm-ups are to warm up. Yeah. Just like before I play golf, I don't hit 1,000 golf balls. I hit 20, and I'm warming up. I'm not practicing. And that's the kind of difference, that you really had to manage your emotions so that you didn't spend your capital before the tip.
Absolutely. So 1986, you guys make the Final Four in the national championship game. Kind of talk about that feeling, of making that Final Four, especially with a senior class like yours, who still to this day ranks as the highest scoring class in college basketball history, which is a very interesting and very cool stat. But kind of talk about that feeling of going through 4 years at Duke and being able to make the Final Four and play for a national championship.
Well, it was an unbelievable year because we were the best team, and we knew it. So we'd won 37 games heading into that championship game against Louisville. And that was the most ever won in a single season by anyone. So we were the winningest team in a single season in college basketball history before the title game. That was an unbelievable year. And the schedule we played didn't indicate that we should win that many games, or anybody should. Because it was a ridiculously difficult schedule. But the funny part about that whole thing was, I don't think we could have played worse in the championship game than we did. And I want to make sure to give appropriate credit to Louisville because they won the game. They're the national champion. I'm not saying that they shouldn't have won. What I'm saying is, and I think it's true, that we shot the ball about as poorly as we could. And they shot over 50%. We shot 35%, and they beat us by a bucket. It was just one of those things where you're going, you got to be kidding me. These, shots weren't going down. It was brutal for us. And we were one bucket away from being historically considered one of the best teams ever. So that one, I think that has stuck with me more than anything else in my life, honestly, as a loss, and defining in a lot of ways. My life wouldn't have been any different had we won, but I've spent a lot of nights thinking about losing that game and how much we put into it and how difficult it was to lose that. But the feeling of doing it was great. But I think we expected it. So it wasn't like this euphoric feeling, but it was very satisfying. And that was, for me, it's kind of a nice feeling with Coach K that, I played on his first NCAA tournament team. He had never been to the tournament before we went in 1984.
Wow.
His first ACC championship team, his first Final Four team. And it would have been nice to be his first national champion. I think we should have been, but it was kind of nice to be there for kind of the first of all that.
So your senior class pretty much kind of set the tone, if you will, for the future of Duke basketball after that.
Yeah, but it was by luck more than anything. I mean, not to say that it wasn't purposeful, but I think we were mindful that we wanted to do a good job to set a foundation for Coach K and for his program and all that. But that wasn't first and foremost for us. First and foremost was we wanted to win for us, and we wanted to win for that team. But it had, we were mindful about recruiting. Like when he was recruiting guys, that we wanted to make sure that we mentored them as best we could, and we brought them into the fold as best we could. So that they felt treated well, and that they would learn, this is the way they need to do it with the guys that come behind them. So we were mindful of that, but part of it was we had a bunch of good guys, and that was the right way to do it. It wasn't like we were all, okay, let's set Coach K up for the future. But that was a nice feeling. We had a really close group, and still do. We're still best friends, and everybody's still involved in basketball. But that's really meaningful, I think, to all of us. Is, we won, and we did well, and we like, to your point, we do take pride in, we helped build a foundation that the others could come in and put through the roof. But the relationship side of it's even better, that all of us have seen each other at our very best, and we've all seen each other at our lowest point. And we were all there to pick each other up through all of it.
I love that. I got to ask you this question before we get into your career at ESPN. So after your professional career, you went back and was on Coach K's staff for a little bit. Kind of talk about that, being a former player on his staff, what were kind of some of the differences that you saw with how he was with coaches and when you were a player?
Yeah, so I played professional basketball for 3 years overseas, and then Coach K called me. I had applied to Duke Law School thinking that, maybe if I get lucky and get in, I can defer it and play 10, 12 years overseas and then go back to law school. I really wanted to play. And, but he called me and said, I've got a position open on my staff, and I'd like you to take it, be an assistant coach. And I know he had it all set up. So I kind of hemmed and hawed about it. And I said, I'd really like to keep playing. And I remember exactly what he said. He said, no, I understand. I mean, but I don't know if this is going to come around for you again. Meaning, I'm offering this once, I'm not going to offer it again. He knew it was the right thing. And then not long after that, I got admitted to Duke Law School. Okay. And so he knew I was going to get admitted if I indicated that I'd accept it. And so it was his idea to do both. And the law school was not happy about it, but I know he set the whole thing up for me. And so I took it. I was a grad assistant for 3 years. And to your question about what sort of the difference and what it was like, what I learned first and foremost was, sort of his genius of simplicity, that our game plans and our game plans were pretty simple. Like, he gave us, here are the things we need to do to win this game. We're going to take away this entry pass, or we're going to push this further out on the floor. This reversal we're going to do. We're going to double here, whatever it was. But it wasn't ultra complicated. And so I didn't know the level of detail that they had behind the scenes. They knew everything that was going on, but they didn't want to overload us with 1,000 things. Because I think his viewpoint back then, maybe thought we were idiots, but if we give them 1,000 things, they're going to do 990 of them poorly. Let's give them the things we want to do well, that are going to make the difference. And then our system and the way we do things is going to carry us through. And so we did the things we did well, but we didn't have a long laundry list or these gigantic, really thick scouting reports. Because look, you've seen it, I've seen it. I go do all these games, and the coaches let me in. I watch their scouting reports, I watch their film, and they give them these gigantic scouting reports. I'm going, these guys aren't reading this. There's no way. You couldn't slug through all that stuff. And if they did, how are you going to absorb it all? So it was the simplicity of it, and then you find out the level of detail behind it. It was really, really brilliant for the way he did things.
So not too far after that, you basically were hired by ESPN in 1995. And, there's a lot of things I love about watching college basketball and College Game Day. And whenever I watch games, there are two commentators that I love watching. Robbie Hummel's one of them. He was on our show not long ago. And I told Robbie the reason why I love him is because of all the insight he gives from a basketball player's perspective. And, he doesn't, if Purdue's playing and I talked to him about this, he's not deep down, he hoped Purdue wins, but at the same time, he's got a job to do. And I've also enjoyed you because, again, same deal, just like, your basketball IQ, you bring it to the table in a big way. And I learned more and more about the game, especially when I was at Michigan State, watching you call games and being around you and guys like Seth Greenberg and Dick Vitale, just like kind of listening to you and talking about your basketball knowledge. And so, but you and Robbie are two of the guys that I've enjoyed so much. And one of my favorite memories with you, and I think you may remember this, was those ESPN commercials where you asked for chocolate pudding in the North Carolina cafeteria, and everybody was elbowing you and hitting you with backpacks. And I think it was Hubert Davis that answered you, what is going on? What is with these people? And he says to you, I don't know, Duke boy. So that's one of my favorite things with you. But just kind of talk about your time being at ESPN and just like kind of how all that, came to fruition for you.
Well, it came to pass that, I had always been interested in broadcasting. I just didn't know what it took. So I worked in the industry when I was in college. I got a job through a Duke alum working for ABC Sports as a runner. So I was a production assistant and got to learn what it was like behind the scenes. So when I finished as an assistant coach, I got married. My wife didn't really want to be sort of a coach's wife. She was a little bit concerned about the amount of moving we'd have to do. She wanted a little more stability. So I just started practicing law, and I thought, well, this is what I'm going to do. And got a call to start doing radio games. And so I figured this is going to be fun. It's going to be time consuming, and I'm going to have to pay attention to what's important. So I go, if it's going to negatively impact my law practice, then I'll quit. But I did it. I had a ton of fun doing it. And apparently some people thought I did well enough where ESPN offered me some games. And so as I did games and tried to get better, one thing I learned pretty quickly was, and maybe part of it was my law background, but that fair isn't difficult. And so to your point about, Robbie or me or whatever, we all went to school somewhere. But after you see, when I'd go to Michigan State practice and you'd see what Tom Izzo and his staff and his team would put into preparation for a game and how badly they wanted to win, you have to honor that. And people may not believe this, but I really don't care who wins the games I go to. And that was an adjustment. I'd never been to a game before I started broadcasting where I didn't care who won. I went in with sort of a rooting interest in the games. I go see the Dodgers. I want the Dodgers to win. I go see, the Lakers when I was growing up, or UCLA. I was a UCLA fan. You want to see them win. That's one of the beauties of sport. But as a broadcaster, I really don't care. And that goes for Duke too. Like, they throw their hat in the competitive ring against North Carolina. I'm there to tell people what I think about the game and who's better, who did this well. Here's what they're running. Here's how this team's trying to stop it. I don't have time to care who wins. And if Duke fans don't like it, too bad. And if Carolina fans don't like it, too bad. It's not that hard. So to me, it's just doing honor to the game and honor to the competition. Do I have favorite places I like to? You're damn right I do. I'm normal like everybody else, but it's not going to bleed into the broadcast. And like, I couldn't have more respect for these programs, and I would not disrespect the game or disrespect the competitive nature of the competitors by having a side to it. And Anthony, one last thing. I mean, I'm cool with whatever people say. They can say whatever they want. I get to say what I want. You get to say what you want. I'm not going to argue. But one thing that I always ask people to consider when they say, well, so-and-so's biased, I say, now, are you sure that it's his mouth that's biased, or could it be partly, in part or in full, your ears? Because when a Michigan State fan is in the Michigan game, there's a lot going on and a lot of emotion. So when somebody praises something that Michigan does, they're not taking a shot at Michigan State, and maybe it's your ears that are having an issue because of your emotions as a fan, and that's okay, because I do the same thing when I'm watching a football game and a commentator says something. Come on, that's BS. Are you kidding me? I'm a fan too, but when the game's over and you start talking about, well, so and so's biased, that bias is that's a factual issue. If somebody doesn't like me as a broadcaster, I don't like Bilas, I think he's a jerk, that's fine. That's a matter of taste. You start saying stuff like bias, that's a factual issue. And I think you have to have something there beyond just, well, I don't like listening to that. You better have a little bit more than that.
See, this is one of the reasons why, I have so much respect for you, Jay, is because, like you said, you call everything right down the middle. You have a job to do. But when it comes to other people's criticism, like, you don't worry about that stuff. Like, you just worry about what's in front of you. You worry about you, and you worry about things that you have to do for your job, for your family. And that's definitely one of the things that I've always respected about you is that right there.
Well, I mean, I appreciate that very much, but I learned a long time ago and internalized that if I'm going to accept compliments, I'd better be prepared to accept criticism. Mm-hmm. Like, you never hear anybody say when they get a compliment, you know what, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He's not qualified to compliment me. He doesn't know the game. Like, come on. We all accept compliments. Everybody knows what they're talking about when they throw a compliment at you. But with criticism, the way I handle it is if it's right and it's reasonable, no matter whom it's from, I act upon it. If it's unreasonable, I dismiss it because I can't deal with unreasonable. I can't reason with it. I can't act upon it. So I just dismiss it. And I don't need to answer everything. People are entitled to their opinions and their judgments. And why would I argue it? So if somebody writes something negative, fine, I'm good with that. I may not agree with it or like it. That's fine too. If it's a factual issue, I may address it. But if it's just opinion, I have to live with that. And what if they're right? If they're right, then maybe I need to examine it, take a look at it, and change it. And I always tell coaches that. I said, look, you've got my number. I give them all my number. And I do it with officials too. People might not believe that, but every official that's doing college basketball has my cell number. And I tell them, if you hear something you don't like, call me. If you think I was wrong on a call or I don't have the rule right or whatever, I want you to call me. We will work it out. And I will listen to you. I promise you. And over the years, I've gotten a couple of phone calls. But most people prefer just to stew about it and get pissed off and scream into the wind. That doesn't do anybody any good. So I'd rather they call and let me know if they're unhappy with something, and that way we can work it out.
Love it. I got a couple more questions for you, and then we'll get into the fun part of the podcast with our rapid fire question segment. Over the years, you've been a big advocate, I think maybe advocate, maybe the right word. If not, please correct me. But you've been a big advocate for college athletes getting paid. And obviously not long ago, college athletes were given the right to, get paid through their name, image, and likeness. So far we've taken the right step in the right direction as far as getting those athletes paid. But what else, in your opinion, do you think the NCAA needs to do to kind of make sure that, the athletes are taken care of down the road, and what else needs to be done on their end?
Well, a couple things. One, I have been an advocate, but I think I've been an advocate for player rights rather than players getting money or anything like that.
Yeah.
So the ability, and look, it's a matter of semantics. So I don't want to get too bogged down in that, but it's the ability, like they should have the right to receive whatever compensation a university wants to provide them, or a third party, whatever. I think they should be treated like everyone else. And one of my issues over the years with NCAA policy has been, quit telling me that they're students. You admitted them into school. We know they're students. No other student is, whether on scholarship or not, is told what they can earn or accept from their university or from anyone else. And more non-athletes receive scholarships than athletes. So quit telling me that it's pay, because it's not pay for the non-athlete on scholarship. You're not suggesting, well, you're getting paid to go to school, so you shouldn't receive anything else except this. All that's a phony construct. So my thing has been, let's be honest about what this is. It's a multi-billion-dollar business, and that's okay. I do not have a problem with what coaches make. I pointed out to show what a big business this is. Like, this isn't Little League here. This is pro sports, and that's okay. We can do all these things at the same time. That's been my issue. But Anthony, the reason that we're in this position has been mismanagement by the NCAA. They've wasted millions of dollars in hundreds of millions in legal fees over the years to try to keep this phony system in place that has been frankly illegal, and we've learned that through the court system. But we're here now where we should have been by choice. The NCAA should have done this a long time ago. So there are some, especially some older school coaches out there that think that this is going to be the end of civilization as we know it. I differ with them, but if any school or any conference doesn't like players getting more than a scholarship, they can put in a rule that says, not in our league. That's fine. They just can't do it. The whole system can't do it under the NCAA umbrella. That's called a cartel, and it's called a monopoly. It's called monopoly power, and it's illegal under federal antitrust law. But conferences can do it. Michigan State tomorrow can say, our values do not allow us to we're going to have a rule that players can't do commercials. They can't make any money outside of, the scholarship and the stipend. They can do that. I don't think they will, because the perception is it would negatively affect them in recruiting. So I don't think they will. And I don't think the Big Ten will do that, because they don't want the SEC getting all the good football and basketball players if they think that'll be a deciding factor. But that's the way this should work. And I don't have I don't think it'll be a problem for players making money. It's not going to cause fights in the locker room any more than playing time will. That's my view. Reasonable minds can differ. If you think it's going to be a problem, then you need to address it the way you think it is. But I look at it a lot like the drinking age. I think a lot of, if we had prohibition now, and then we said, all right, now at age 21, you're going to be able to drink alcohol legally. I think there might be some that would say this is going to cause an enormous amount of problems. I mean, this is going to be it's going to be incredible how many problems it's going to cause. And my view of that would be, you know what? You're going to have a few people that drink too much and they're going to throw up in the parking lot. And you're going to have a few that are going to be dumb enough to drink and get in a car. That's going to happen. But the overwhelming majority are going to handle it just fine. And we should be making policy based upon the overwhelming majority, not on a couple of instances we could point to where we don't like it.
See, one of the things I would love to see the NCAA do is, and my dad's a big, advocate for this as well. And my dad worked in Michigan State's athletic department for 26 years. So he's been around NCAA athletics for almost 40 years. One of the things I would love to see the NCAA do is to give, I don't even know if it's even possible, to give all athletes, when they leave college, graduate from college, is give them health benefits for life. Because if you look at, so my brother-in-law played right tackle in Michigan State. He could have had a professional career, but then he tore his ACL in the last bowl game of his senior year. And now he's got to have potential shoulder replacement surgery and knee replacement surgery. And my dad has always kind of been an advocate of, if the NCAA gave these guys and girls health benefits for life down the road, then they wouldn't need to worry about potential, surgeries down the road because they're going to be covered. So that would be one of the things I would love to see the NCAA do down the road as well. Do you agree with that?
I do. I would like to see there be benefits available for the players if that's what the structure thinks is the right thing to do. One thing, but I would like to see, Anthony, I would like to see the NCAA deregulate and only focus on what's really important. And that is, as a governing body, they should be focusing upon, all the athletes being full-time students. I'm fine with them policing that. And they should be running championships. Pretty much everything else the schools can handle. Yeah. Like I look at it sort of, the idea that they're not policing how the universities build their facilities. They're not saying, all right, we all have to, here are our building codes and here's how much, they're not doing that. These schools are gigantic. They can handle their own business. And they each, Duke, as an example, because I went there, has 30,000 employees. Do you think it's difficult for them to figure out how they're going to treat 300 athletes? Whether they're going to pay them how much, whether they're going to give them health benefits, how much. They know exactly what to do and how to do it. And the sort of the line I use a lot, and I believe it, is, Duke or Michigan State, they know exactly whom to recruit, whom to put in the game when they want to win. They know who to pay and how much. It's not that big of a deal. They're not sitting up at night going, wait a minute, should we pay the university president the same we pay the landscape professional? What about the food service professional versus the head coach of the football team? Should we pay them all the same because they all work really hard? They don't do that. It's not that hard. And if they want to give benefits, lifetime benefits, give them. If they want to make some people will say the scholarship is worth X amount of dollars. A Duke education is worth $300,000. Great, then factor that into your offer. That's fine. Say, look, because the Duke education costs $300 and the Michigan, or $300,000, the Michigan State education costs $200,000. We're going to give you your education expenses plus $50,000. And Michigan State says, well, we'll give you the Michigan State education plus $200,000 and see how it shakes out. I'm tired of that kind of argument. And I'm tired of everybody sort of saying, well, this is the way it should be. It's illegal. What the NCAA has been doing for all of these years is illegal, and it always has been. And they've gotten a free ride from the courts for a long, long time. And that's okay. We're where we are now. And if some coaches, I've heard it, I love them. They're great people, but they're threatening to quit. They're saying, the transfer portal. I don't like the transfer portal either. I think it could be better managed, but I think the players should have the right to transfer. We can do it in a better manner. But the name, image, likeness, this is going to be this is awful, all that stuff. And they're threatening to quit. If they feel that way, they should quit. I'll miss them, but they should quit if they feel that way, because I don't want anybody to feel that way. Right. This is the right thing. Players having rights is the right thing. If it's not right for you and your school, then you put the rule in. But there can't be a blanket rule. That's not the way America works, and it's not the way America works in a multi-billion-dollar industry. And I hate to differ with my best friends in the business about this, but I do, and I always have.
So last question I want to ask you, and then we'll get into the fun part. I want you to put your analyst cap on for me. We're about to, get into the next season of college basketball here. who are your teams to watch? Who do you think will be cutting down the nets in April 2022? And where do you see Michigan State going this year?
I see Michigan State in the top tier, to cut to the chase, because, Anthony, you've heard me say this, this, from probably 1997 on, there's not been a program I admire more than Michigan State. Mm-hmm. And the reason I say 1997 is I got a phone call from a friend of mine who was an assistant in the Big Ten. And I said, tell me in your league what we're missing. And he said, you're missing Michigan State. He said, and I'll use his language. He says, they're a bitch. He says that's the hardest program to play against. A guy's been in coaching forever. And I started really watching, and I couldn't believe that, especially back then, I'd watch the opposing bench when Michigan State would get a defensive rebound and they'd start their offensive transition, and the entire coaching staff would stand up and start waving their arms to get back. Like the fear of Michigan State's fast break, that numbered break, I'd never seen anything like it. And I really started studying the program. And to me, and you asked before about, playing for Coach K, the one guy I would have loved to play for more than anyone, I think, outside of Coach, is Tom Izzo. I don't think I could have played for him, though, because I don't think he would have wanted me on his team. I don't think I'm tough enough to have played for him. And I love going to their practices. And I think they're going to be really good this year. Tom seems to really love the makeup of his team. And Hogard taking over as the point guard, I think they're going to be big time. But Michigan will be right there. UCLA and Gonzaga are going to be great again. And I think Villanova will be great again. This year will be as good of a year as we've had in the last 10 and maybe longer, because more of the best players came back, and we've got an unbelievable group of young players coming in. So the talent level across the board is going to be really, really good. So I think it's got a chance to be compelling, and hopefully with butts in the seats again, if things trend in a better direction, we're going to have a great year. But I think Michigan State is going to be at the forefront of that. I just hope. I think last year there were some teams, and I count Michigan State and Duke among them, that the pandemic hit harder. Not with illness, but with and it's not an excuse. I'm not making excuses for anybody.
Right.
But there are realities to this, and I think it hit those programs a little bit harder. And I think this is going to be more of a bounce back year for those two programs and several others that we're going to see. We're going to see a huge variance from what we saw last year.
I completely agree with you, and I'm super excited to watch. Like you said, butts in seats, packed arenas. I'm excited to watch the Breslin Center get rowdy again this year. All right, you ready for some fun?
Yeah. Well, I've had fun already. I don't know. Maybe it's just more fun. I've enjoyed the hell out of it.
No, I definitely enjoyed having you on. It's been great talking with you. So right now we have 10 rapid fire questions, Jay, and these questions, they're goofy, they're serious, however you want to put them. So our first question, I like to call it the master's question because it is a tradition unlike any other. So question number 1, strawberry or grape jelly?
Grape, not close.
You're like the second or third person that's chosen grape. So
I grew up on grape jelly. Peanut butter and jelly was grape. And if there was ever strawberry in there, it was because there was no grape jelly left at my house. And it was always a huge letdown.
I love that. Question number 2, your favorite arena you've called a game at?
Allen Fieldhouse at Kansas. And I say that because, Duke or the Breslin, I love those places. They're on the highest tier. And Duke is my favorite because of the history of my personal history of it. The only difference is the reason I don't have it number 1, and I put Allen Fieldhouse, is Duke, you call the game from a horrifying angle.
I've seen it.
so that sucks. But if you're down on the floor, Duke would be number 1. But it's the best place to call a game from is Allen Fieldhouse. I will tell you this, and I don't want to ramble on this because I know it's rapid fire. But my favorite story with my son is at the Breslin Center.
Really?
He was probably 14 years old and he had some days off from school. So I took him up for a college game day. And Izzo had him over to the house, and it couldn't have been nicer. Grabs him and takes him in. His son Steven was about the same age as my son, and so that day at the game, I told my boy, like, look, you got a credential on, you got the run of the place. Just don't leave the building. But if you want to sit in the zone, I'm not going to police where you are. So he sits with a bunch of Michigan State students right behind the broadcast position. And as Dan Schulman and I walked in, one of the Michigan State students points at me as I'm walking by, sitting right next to my son, and says, "Hey, that's Jay Bilas. I hate that guy." And my son goes, "I know, right?" And he loved it. He talks about that all the time, and we've had more laughs about that than anything.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome. Question number 3: your favorite pro sports team?
The Los Angeles Dodgers. I'm a gigantic Dodger fan and have been since I was a little kid. Even though I like basketball more than baseball, it's a close call, but it's the Dodgers.
I love it. Question number 4: Jimmy John's or Subway?
Jimmy John's. Again, not close. I get a number 9 Italian, no mayo.
That's why I always get 2. So great minds think alike right there. Question number 5: best motivational speaker not named Anthony Ianni?
Alan Stein is really good, whom I've worked with. We've been colleagues for a long time. So I would say Alan Stein, or Bob Knight was pretty good. And he spoke to our team one year, and I can still remember just about every word from it. But his presence and message, he didn't speak for very long, but it made an impact.
Awesome. All right. Taking off the analyst cap now. If Michigan State and North Carolina are playing, who are you rooting for?
What are they playing?
Football.
I don't know that I'd have a rooting interest there. I didn't grow up in North Carolina, grew up in California. So I've never had a hatred for North Carolina. I wanted to win because Carolina was so good. I understood the rivalry and how big it was, but there was never hate there. And still, there isn't any at all. I don't know. I'd probably, if it was, I'd probably, depending on where it would be. If it was at Carolina, I'd probably lean toward Carolina. Maybe the crowd had influenced me a little bit. But it's hard for me. Like I'm a huge Michigan State believer. I'm not going to say fan. I am a believer, and it's because of Izzo. But I've met so many people there that I believe in what that place is about. That's a tough question. That's a tough question. But if it's at Michigan State, I'm wearing green.
I love it. Question 7: if you could teach one class, what would the subject be?
If I could teach one class, probably the thing I know best is basketball, but I wouldn't think I could teach it. I would probably want to teach something with regard to sort of sports law. Okay. And I really feel comfortable in that realm, talking about sort of how things work in the college sports realm, especially because it has become a specialized area. And when I was in college, I was on an NCAA committee, so I learned about policy there, and it really piqued my interest, and I've studied it, so I feel like I know it.
Good answer. Question number 8: your dream vacation.
My dream vacation has usually been tropical with my wife. And so we've sort of enjoyed those things. The last place we went to was to this ridiculous resort in Turks and Caicos on a private island. So I would want to go back. Our honeymoon was in Tahiti. Okay. That's a long trip, but it was worth it. So I would probably choose the Turks and Caicos thing. The other would be Lake Como in Italy. That's one of my favorite destinations.
Awesome. Question number 9. You'll like this one. Your favorite golf course to play at?
Pine Valley Golf Club in New Jersey. It's not close. I've been really lucky that I've played a lot of really cool places, but nowhere is as good as Pine Valley anywhere in the world.
Awesome. And last question, who do you admire the most?
My father would be one, and then Coach K would be one, and then a lawyer colleague of mine named Ben Hawfield would be at the top shelf there. Honestly, I'd put Tom Izzo up there, but the shelf, that tier is a high one, and it's not only one person on it; it's a lot of different people. And to me, that's been one of the things that's shaped my view of the world, is that I don't take one viewpoint. I consider a wide variety. So those that have been influential on me, it's a pretty horizontal totem pole that's awfully high up on the highest shelf. But those guys would be up there, and then my wife would be the one I listen to the most, and she's provided me sort of the most emotional wisdom that I've ever encountered.
I love it. All right, Jay, last thing I'm going to have you do to close out the show. I do this with all my guests. I want you to give your positive message of the week for the listener. So your positive message for the week, you have the floor, sir.
I guess my positive message, Anthony, would be I'm trying as best I can to be mindful of what's important to the people around me. So whatever I can do to make my wife's experiences the best they can be, and make sure she has everything that she needs and wants, I'm going to do that. I think at my age now, I'm 57, and my kids are out of the house now and on their own. I've paid more attention to what's important to my wife. So she's going to have whatever she wants going forward. And most of it, the overwhelming majority, is just quality time with the people we think are the most important. And so we've been really mindful to do that. And so I have taken more time, tried to take more time out of my schedule and make sure that I'm saying yes to the right things. That I've said yes to other things that have been no's to my family and to the people that are most important. And I want to make sure I'm not doing that. So that I hope that's positive, that, make sure you're saying yes to the right things, because when you say yes to even though they're not wrong things, but they're not the highest priority, you're saying no to your highest priority. And I want to make sure that my wife and my family are my highest priority.
I love it. Ladies and gentlemen, he is ESPN's own, the man, the myth, the legend, Jay Bilas. Jay, again, I want to thank you so much for coming on. It has been an absolute pleasure to have you on, sir. And for those of you listening that don't know, Jay wrote a blurb for my upcoming book, Centered. And again, I cannot thank you enough for that and your support. It's been an absolute blast having you on.
Well, just an honor for me, and I'm a big fan of you and the kind of person you are and what you do. And I can't wait to get a hold of that book so I can resell it for more money.
I love it. Thank you so much for coming on, Jay. Greatly appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, brother. Good to see you, Anthony.
Good to see you. I really want to thank Jay Bilas for coming on to the show. Just an absolute blast to have him on. And, again, I cannot thank him enough for all his support and everything he has done for me, writing a blurb for my book, Center, which is out this month, September 7th. If you have not gotten your copy yet, go to Amazon.com, Barnes & Nobles, and, of course, IUPress.com to get your copy of Centered: Autism, Basketball, and One Athlete's Dream. Yes, that was a shameless plug for my book. But again, just such a great conversation. And like I said, I don't know who's going to top being number one guest on this show. I mean, right now, Jay's got that covered right now, and he may have that spot for a while until we, maybe we ask you, the people, what guests would you like to see come on in the future? Maybe that's something we'll talk about and post on Twitter one day. But again, just an awesome conversation we had. I'm super happy and super thankful that he was able to take the time and come on to the show today. My positive message for the week, and I guess this message is mainly for the athletes out there, especially the young generation of athletes and high school athletes. Jay and I kind of talked about a little bit about how whenever you play a sport, it should be fun. Don't look at it as having a job. What I do as a motivational speaker and as an advocate, that's a job. What Jay does as an analyst and a lawyer, that's a job. What my wife does, a hairstylist, that's a job because we get paid for those jobs. High school athletes, for you guys, it should be about having fun. Are there times where it's going to stink doing all those extra laps around the track, doing those extra sprints? Yeah, that's the hard part. But the hard work will bring you the reward, which makes it even more fun. And that's not just my message to all athletes. It's my message to everybody in life. Have fun with what you do in life. Take time to have some fun. Reflect on everything you have in life. And on top of that, don't feel like and dread things in life as well. If there are times where you feel down, just remember to have fun. Remember to look back on things that you have in life, the important things like family, friends, your job, etc. But continue to have fun. If you're having success in life and you're not having fun, then what are you doing? I've always told high school seniors, do what you love to do for two reasons. And that's for a passion and with a purpose. And if you do those two things in life, you have those two things, you're going to be pretty darn successful at what you do in life. But the number one thing out of all those, of having those two things that you need to have, is make sure you have fun doing it in the process. Again, the process may not be fun. Hard work sometimes may not be fun, but it's the rewarding part from your hard work that makes everything so satisfying and so exciting. Have fun in life. Don't dwell on the past. Enjoy what you have in front of you and have some fun. Because you never know what tomorrow's going to bring. Again, thank you so much to Jay Bilas for coming on. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We will see you on the next episode of the Centered Podcast. Again, thank you so much, everybody, for all your love and support. And continue to subscribe, spread the word about the podcast, and we will see you on the next episode. Peace and love, everybody. Thank you.
Anytime you're shortcutting it, you're probably cheating some people. Players play. Tough players win.